mathematics. Int is on unit numbers, subtopic integers, where we will identify integers. So the first step is you make a reference point on a ground. That is my reference point. You move 4 steps on the right, 4 steps on the right from the reference point, like that. You name the reference point as 0. The first point is 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the reference point. You move to the right. The other one is you move 4 steps on the left, and they turn to be negative. So from the reference point, which is 0, the first step you moved on the right, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you move 4 steps on the left, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, but they are negative. From that, you identify that integers, they are positive whole numbers. Positive whole numbers, positive whole numbers, and they are positive whole numbers, comma, negative whole numbers, and 0. So one example of a positive whole number is 1, 10, 60, 5, 50, 1002, and they continue. The other example, that was example 1. Example 2 is about the negative 2, negative 6, negative 1000, negative 10,000, 10,000, and they continue as such. From there, my first NB is that numbers with fractions and decimals. So any number with a fraction and a decimal, they are not integers. So an example is 1 over 5, 2 over 5. You can add as many fractions as you can, even the improper fractions like 1 and 1 over 2, 7 over 5. They are not integers as long as they have a fraction. Also, a number which has a decimal in a number 0.2, 5.7, even those which have more than one decimal place, 5.235, they are not integers. The next NB is that any number which have a decimal which is 0 is an integer. Any number which have a decimal at the end which is 0 is an integer. How? If a number is a whole number and then they place a decimal and a 0, that number is an integer. An example is 10.0, 5.0, 100.0, 67.0. Any number which is a whole number and it is placed a decimal. And with that information, you can be able to do exercise 1.1, which is here. Exercise 1.1 from the master's book, exercise 1.1. Classify the following numbers as either integers or non-integers. So the first integer is A, the second is C, the third is F, and also D. Reason being, we said a number which is a whole number and a decimal which is a decimal then 0, that number is an integer. So the non-integers are 10.2, 6.6, and negative 3.5. The other one is number 2. You identify all integers in the thermometer, which is very simple. They are negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. Then from there, number 3, the question is write integers to represent the following situation. Now, the 7th floor above the ground. From there, you can represent a number line using a scale. That's the point. So when you are given, the question is 7 floors above the ground. That means you draw the ground, and the ground is the reference point, and it is 0. From 0, you move 7 steps up. The other side of the ground, below the ground, is the negative. Number 3B is 3 floors below the ground. This applies the same, but you move 3 steps below the ground. When you move to C, where you are told to represent 500 meters above the ground, you choose a suitable scale. You can use 50, 100, 100, 200. It continues to 50, 500. So mine, I've decided to use 100, 200, 300, and you represent this is the ground and it's 0 and it's the reference point. Then you have 50 meters. You can still draw it and represent with a scale of 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. From there, you have the E, where you're told to 20 degrees below 0. So this is the 0, this is the 0. So 20 degrees below 0, start negative 5, 10, 15, and 20. Then you move to F, where you represent 75 degrees above the ground. You can use a scale of 25, 50, and 75. After identifying integers, now we represent integers, that is representing integers on a number line, where we said an integer is a positive whole number, a 0, and a negative whole number. So how do we represent? We just draw a straight line. For the straight line, you mark the center. At the center, at the center, that's where you put your 0. On the right side, this right side, that's where you present using positive numbers. And on the left hand side, that's where you present using negative whole numbers. It's very simple to draw it. You only need to draw a straight line. You mark the center 0. On the right side, you put numbers which are positive. On the left, you put numbers. On the left, you put numbers which are negative. From there, you can you move on by representing. You represent integers using representing integers using a scale. A scale, if you can remember, they are the one which we used. 1 centimeter represent either 10 or 100 centimeters, and the rest. Now here, if you are given 500 meters above sea level, it's very hard. You draw a number line like this, and you mark it as 0, and you represent all the way to 500. So you draw it up to 500. So what do? You just represent this 500 using a scale, and there are different types of scales. You can use 10, 20, 30, 40, 20, 40, 80, and the rest. You can use 50, 100, 150 at an interval of 50. This is an interval of 10, interval of 20, interval of 50, interval of 100, and the interval of 100 is the best. So how do we do it? You mark a point 0. This is our point 0. Our point 0. Then from the point 0, you move to the positive side. You start with an interval of 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. And then you will have represented the 500 meters above sea level. Top scorer exercise 1, number 1. Use a number line in the exercise. Identify the greater number in each pair on a number line. So here we have negative 3 and positive 3. We represent them using a number line. We draw our number line. The reference point is 0. The positive 1, 2, 3. The negative 1, 2, 3. So between these negative 3 and positive 3, which is greater than the other. So as you all know, negative means it's like when you have a loan. Positive is when you don't have a loan. So positive 3 is greater than negative 3. B, positive 5, positive 11. This is positive 5 and positive 11. So when you have 5 and 11, which is greater than the other, so positive 11 is greater than 5. The other one is negative 11 and positive 2. So you have a loan of 11 and you have a profit of 2. So 2 positive greater than negative 11. The next question is number 2. Identify the smaller number in each of the pair on a number line. So A, we have negative. The question is negative 2 and negative 8. you identify the smaller number, negative 2 and negative 8, which is the smaller number. Now, when it comes to negative and negative, we take the number which is near the reference point, or 0 being greater than the one in ikoku on the far end. So, because negative 2 is the one closer to 0, so negative 2 is greater than negative 8. That means negative 8 is less than negative 2. So this negative 8 is the smaller one. The other question is positive 4 and negative 9, which is the smaller one. This is positive 4 here, and we have negative 9 here. So what do? A number, when you compare a positive and a negative number is smaller. So obvious, negative 9 will be lesser than positive 4 as the answer. The other question is positive 4, 1 and negative 1. The same case, when you compare a negative and a positive, the number which is negative is lesser than the positive. Juu ni kama uko na deni na uko na pesa yako kwa mfuko, so ukiwa na deni it's lesser than, so negative 1 is lesser than positive 1, so that's the answer. We will move to question 3. Use lesser than or greater than sign to compare the following pairs of integers. Now we have negative 4 and negative 7. So we said when it is negative, we take the number which is near 0 to be greater than. So between 7 and 9 on a number line, we can draw a number line here and we state 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. So which is near 0 between negative 4 and negative 7? So it is negative 4. So negative 4 is greater than negative 7. Uko na deni ya 4 na uko na deni ya 7. So deni ya 4 ndio utalipa kidogo. So you have negative 4 and negative 7. Any number which is near 0, when it comes to negative and negative, tends to be greater. So here you will state negative 4 is greater than negative 7. B, positive 9, positive 2 and negative 9. Now when you have positive and negative, you I had stated that negative is always less. So positive 2, despite 2 is on a number is less than 9, but when you use the sign positive and negative, positive is greater than negative. So positive 2 is greater than negative 9. Then you move positive 3 and positive 5. This one is obvious, positive is positive, so 3 less than 5, use the lesser sign. Positive 8 and negative 8, you use the positive and negative. So whenever you see a positive and negative is always lesser than. Now negative 5 and negative 12, negative and negative. So the one which is near 0 is negative 5. So negative 5 is greater than negative 12. Negative 12 and negative 15. The one which is near 0 is the one is greater. So negative 12 is greater than 15. So to differentiate between between greater than, which is written as this, and the lesser than, it's a sign that confuses a lot. If you check lesser than, this is L and this is its sign. So the L lesser than, you only write the word L lesser than the letter L. So the L is the one which is lesser than. So when you want to differentiate a lesser than, or when you get confused, first write the word lesser than, then take this, the L, and represent it as an angle, as this lesser than, so that I know some students get confused. We move to arrange number from the lowest to the largest. Here we have negative. Here we have negative 1, positive 1, negative 3, negative 7, negative 4, and negative 5. How do we arrange them? We start with the negative, the negative side the one which have the biggest number, which is negative 7, which is, so we start with the lowest to the largest, then and we move to -7, we move to -4, then we move to -3, then we move to -1, then we move to positive, negative are over, we move to positive, so we move to +1, then +5. The next question, we start with the negative, the number which has the greatest number, which is negative between all this, is -5, then we move to -3, then we move to -2, then we move to positive now, +2, +6, and +8. From there we move to the other one. Starts with the one which has the bigger number, which is 9, -9, -9. Then we move to -7, then we move to -2, then we move to positive sign. We start with +3, we move to positive, we have done not +3, +7, then we move to +9, and with that you have done your exercise 1 on top scorer. Now we move to the masters. Now we have exercise 1.1. Represent the following integers on a number line without reducing the scale. Now this one, you need to represent the whole. You start with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,